Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, Fearless Females. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a big shout out to our sponsor, Fearless Financial Advisors. So today we're talking with Janet Gipson. And we had a really interesting conversation, which we never actually found the answer to, but it's a conversation about authenticity. Like a lot of times when you're younger and just starting out in the profession, you want to fit in. You want to look like everybody else. You want to wear the three-piece suit. And Janet and I just talked a little bit about that. And when I asked her what she would tell her 20-year-old self, she said, I tell her to wear the dress, wear fuchsia, be bold, be authentic. And we kind of had a discussion about like, would you listen to yourself if you could go back and talk to yourself and say, hey, be more authentic earlier, be bold, be brave, wear bright colors. And I know that some of my other guests have said that too. And I've even felt that in my career where to try and fit in, during the early part of your career, when you're younger, you're wearing the three-piece suits, even though it doesn't quite feel like you. And then when you get a little bit older, a little bit braver, a little bit more settled, maybe a little bit further up the ladder, then you can bring pink into your wardrobe or fuchsia or wear the bright colors or be more authentic. And my question was, could you do that earlier? Is it just because I was too shy and scared to do it earlier and other people are braver than me, more fearless? I mean, it's a good question, but I loved my conversation with Janet. I really felt like she had a lot to offer. And so join in and let's get started. Thanks. We are here today with Janet Gipson. She is the Talent Acquisition Executive, and I'm so excited that you joined us today. Janet, I'm really interested in delving into your story and kind of hearing a little bit more about your journey. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Lorie.
So the very first question I always ask is one that's my very favorite, which is, I'm a reader. I read anything and everything. Tell me, what is your favorite book?
Typically people ask, what are you reading? So you made me kind of think a bit longer than I'm used to on this one. But my answer is The Art of Possibility. It's written by, and I have to refer to it, Rosamund Stone Zander and her husband, Benjamin. The Art of Possibility was a book that was recommended to me probably 10-ish years ago when I was going through my own career, I'll say gray area, but it's really about our mindset when we're navigating this life and this professional career in terms of not closing our minds to things that could be possible, right? A lot of how we navigate life is about what we're thinking, right? And if we're thinking negative, we're thinking pessimistic, that's typically how it happens. And so the Art of Possibility really flips that on its head, but connects you to theories and philosophies that actually shift your mindset in a way that actually helps you thrive. And I think as a leader, be a better beacon of hope for your teams and help to guide them and navigate the tough challenges, both at work and at home. So
it kind of possibility. It shifts your mindset sort of then.
Exactly. Well, it does it shift it? What I will say is it exposes the strength of your mindset as you work and live your life, right? Mindset matters. And if we don't pay attention to it, it can wreak havoc in ways that we don't even realize.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you do know that if you start thinking negatively or going down those kind of, all of us never have all good days, right?
Right.
And so if you're having one of those bad days, it kind of does affect your energy. And I have been in charge of teams before, and it affects the whole team, it feels like, if you're in the
That's
farm.
right. That's right. And it's not a pet peeve of mine, but someone who is raising their hand to be a leader, even of one person, you have got to have this in check, because now you're responsible for more than just yourself. And I think it is an important aspect of leadership to be able to inspire, and not just lead and get the work done, but to inspire and tackle the big things. So.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I can tell we're going to have a great conversation, because
Yeah.
I am all on board with that. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you start out? How did you get where you are today? And kind of what do you do? Just tell us a little bit about you.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm a daughter of what I'm going to say scientist, a science teacher, physics teacher, and an engineer. And so it was never really a question of what I would do when I went to college. I majored in math and engineering and graduated and got a job as an engineer, and promptly decided that wasn't quite what I thought it would be or wanted to do. So I'm using more recently the term I meandered, because as I meander, I learn what I like and what I don't like. And after that stint as an engineer, I actually went back to grad school and decided that an MBA would help me kind of evaluate what opportunities were there on maybe the non-technical side of work,
Mm-hmm.
and then went into sales engineering. So it really helped. That role was pivotal. And I'll talk a little bit about, I think, about a career coach that I engaged, but it was pivotal because I knew I wanted to preserve the technical rigor of my work, because I had the aptitude, had the interest, just didn't want to apply it in those traditional ways, but also wanted to connect with others, work with people, not sit in front of a computer all day, and solve problems for people or not. So sales engineering, think of it as kind of enabling technology that you sell to a customer. So the sales folks would sell, and then my team would come in and help implement, train, troubleshoot, just to preserve and hopefully grow revenue accounts. So I did that for quite a while in the telecommunication space, and grew that into more business development roles. So I then absorbed more business development, more sales, where I had a P&L, profit and loss line, that I was responsible for, and did that for many, many years. Grew my team, loved it, until I didn't. About 15, 16 years into that space, really realized that, chasing the bottom line, although I loved my customers, I loved my team, I loved what I did, it just wasn't enough anymore. And that's when I, had just a big question mark at that time. I'm married. At the time, I have kids that are, in middle school. So I'm also a mother, and there's all the challenges related to that. And, what I found was it's so important when you're being pulled in those different directions to have your value alignment. Not that revenue generation and customer satisfaction weren't important. I just wanted more alignment, more human alignment, more give back. And so that's when I applied for a head of talent acquisition position. And you say, well, how in the world did you get from one to the other? That's where my sales hat came on, because I was able to demonstrate that a lot of what I did day to day in terms of communication skills, influence, selling, and also technical acumen is also resident in talent acquisition. Yeah. Certainly not directly, but in this day and age, coaching my team of talent acquisition partners how to be influential. How do you convert someone to want to apply to your company, and what are the key areas of customer and client interaction that you need to be familiar with? So I was doing it in service of people finding their lifelong careers in some cases. And that's where I've been. So I have enjoyed it. It is a story. Everyone always says, how in the world did you get where you are? But that's my story.
I love it. I come from a family of 5 engineers.
Wow.
So I am well aware. I joke all the time. I have to call myself a financial engineer to even be invited to the family reunions. But what sort of engineering did you go into? Just because I'm
I was
curious.
mechanical. I did mathematics. I had a double undergrad in mathematics and mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
So I worked for Newport News Shipping. I did a lot of internships in the Virginia area. I'm up from Southeast Virginia.
Uh-huh.
But my first job was working on nuclear aircraft carrier
Hmm.
groups in the Newport News, Virginia area.
Oh, that sounds interesting. But I can see, like, having known engineers really well, I can see how that career maybe wouldn't speak to somebody who wants to talk to humans and help humans, and because it's very technical and it's very isolated a lot of times.
It is. Nothing's ever black and white. And I have often wondered if I had done a little more research or given it, are there areas within the STEM field that I could have blended, without jumping to HR or
Mhm.
sales, perhaps. But yeah, no, given what I was exposed to, and I actually had two good jobs, I'd say, as engineers, and neither were giving me they were feeding me in that way. So
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and it sounds like you also made like a career kind of out of putting those more technical aspects into the human side of things, like the human engineering. I mean, it's fascinating how you can take the more engineering, more STEM concepts and make them apply to a lot of different fields.
you're absolutely right. My husband tells me I'm probably too logical sometimes, and everything's not an algebra equation. But but you're right. I actually look at things in that way when I'm, trying to solve a problem at work or interacting with someone. Because back to the book, The Art of the Possible, there's always an answer. It may not be what we like. It may not be what's jumping out at us initially, but there's definitely the tenacity that's in me helps drive me toward a solution, whatever that is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a really good mix too of like your talents, like the engineering side wants to go to those processes and that data, and the human side wants to delve into relationships and problem solving. And it's a really nice, I think you've done it really well, like married the two so that you have a career that feeds both sides of you. Because even if you didn't go into an engineering field, it sounds like you still got those STEM characteristics in you.
Yeah. And you talk about what would you, and I'm not going to, you've got your questions coming, but if I
Mhm.
had to coach, when I'm coaching my teams today, I kind of tell them, don't follow the linear path that everyone tells us is supposed to be high school, college, job, life, whether you
Mhm.
get married or not. Take agency and craft your own. And in fact, you are you, and no one else knows you as well as you do. So you're the best person to do it.
Mhm.
And I, especially in the talent acquisition space, you find that people just tend to apply to jobs whether they give them the warm and fuzzies or not. And everyone doesn't have the benefit of that. But I do contend that if people understood that the job search process and finding your dream job is more of an art of exploration of yourself and what's out there that can meet you where you are, they'd be a lot happier.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at things too. So, Janet, tell me, is there an investment that you've made in yourself, something that you can look back on and say, "Oh my goodness, if I hadn't done that, I just don't think I'd be where I'm at today."
Yeah. Ironically, a career coach.
Uh-huh.
I and that's it's not so profound. The MBA was an investment, but the career coach, I had just turned 30 years old. I was, less than 5 years married, had the two engineering jobs, and was just swirling because there was so much change. I'd moved from Virginia to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I wanted to be intentional about the job that I took after I finished my MBA. And so I convinced my husband, let's just invest. And at the time, a package, of course, things are so different now, but I think that package was probably $3,000 or $4,000 outright, which is quite an investment if you're not quite sure what you're looking for. And so it was life-changing. The focus with which I was coached on identifying my dream jobs, right? They go all the way back to what are your values? What are you good at? What's your skill set? But also, what type of company do you want to work for? What are their values? And so all the things you hear about today, I was taken through all of that. We did interview coaching and video and playback. As excruciatingly painful as that was, it actually helped me understand that it's not a crapshoot when you go on screen or go in a room for an interview, nor is it just fanning your resumes out to 50 different people. There's actually there's tailoring that should go on and that helps to support your chances of getting in the interview and ultimately the job. And that, like I said, was a long time ago, and it still pays dividends today. I use it in leading my own team now that I'm on the other side of that desk. But I also coach others in terms of helping them understand the importance of slowing down and finding your golden thread that matches the thread in the position you're applying for, and how to weave that in a way that delights the person on the other side of the desk so that they'll make you a job offer.
Yeah, that's really interesting and something that you don't think about quite as often, especially nowadays when there's like the AI that goes through your resume. It's like it's like you spam out 600 of those dang things.
Yes.
And it not every one of them feels like crafted for you. You're just hoping something hits.
And hoping is not a strategy. It's just not. And it's frustrating. And I talk to people all the time, and it's not easy, and it takes time and thought, but when done well, I've seen it pay dividends. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea too of investing in that coaching. Did you continue with different coaches or with that coach through your career, or it was a kind of a one-time thing?
It was a one-time done because I wasn't working at the time. We had just moved, so I had the time to go, because this was actually like a firm that I drove to, and it was crazy back before COVID when virtual just didn't exist. But no, it was, call it a month or 2 month process where we narrowed it down. They took me all the way to interviews, and that was my first job, my first real job out west, the one I stayed at for 16, 17 years. So yeah, no, I didn't engage with that type of firm. Now I've had coaches since then, but not career coaches, if you will.
And that brings up another question, because there are those that, we'll review your resume, pay us $20,000 or whatever they, charge. So how do you find a good one that just isn't like, going to give you a resume tune-up and send you on your way? It sounds like that was an in-depth sort of thing.
It was, but because they taught me how to fish. These $20,000 people are fishing for you. So I wouldn't recommend that, for the simple reason of it isn't one size fits all. And once you know and become more familiar with, I think, a proven process, sure, you can say, hey, pay someone to formulate, you are only applying to 5 types of jobs, and so give me 5 resumes that fit that. That makes sense. But you still need to understand what looks good and how to get it to that point, I think. So you need to be an educated consumer in those spaces.
I like the idea of they taught me to fish, Yeah.
And that's important. And I think gosh, how many of us make money off of services that people just want us to fish for them, and that's great. But if you don't want to spend that money,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's the worst advice someone ever gave you? Have you had some really bad advice, and did you take it? Did you not take it?
Yeah. Someone told me not to apply for a job. They said they were a coworker, and I was just, I told you I was in that gray space. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking about applying for this job. And they were like, nope, don't do it. You'll never make it. They're not looking for someone like you. And, at the time, I actually was listening,
Mhm.
kind of ingesting what they were saying to me. And the exec coach I had at the time says, and what do they know about you to even be able to make that conjecture?
Uh-huh.
Kind of jolted me back into saying, you know what, you're right. So I didn't listen to him,
Mhm.
and I applied anyway, and I got the job.
Yeah.
And the lesson that taught me was always, you can talk to people, and you should talk to people and get their advice, because that's how we grow. That's how we expand our own horizons. But at the end of the day, only you know you. And,
Mhm.
betting on yourself is never a bad choice to make. So
Sometimes really, really scary.
it's most of the time, but I'm the older I get, I'm kind of leaning into the fear, because typically that's where the breakthrough is.
Mhm.
Nobody tells you that.
Yeah, I like that idea, and that's my podcast is Fearless Females, and I
Hmm.
always say, it's not that I don't have the fear, I'm scared to death most of the time, but I try it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of push yourself, and then you get a little better and a little braver, and then the next bigger task is waiting for you on the other side. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. What about a situation that you can kind of look back on and you say, "Oh my goodness, if I knew then what I know now, I just would have totally done that differently." Maybe not regret, but like something that they call them learning experiences. I've had plenty.
Yeah. When I talked about working in sales and client engagement, I loved the work. I loved the technical aspect. I love my people, my team, my clients. What I will say is, though, that the organization, and quite honestly, some of the people and the culture
Mhm.
were counter to my values. And I'm talking early 30s, right?
Mhm.
And at that time, and I think every 35-year-old that I know, give me more. I want to do more. Pay me more. Promote me. You're just hungry. You're at a time
Mhm.
in your career and life where you're able to conquer the world, and you literally want it, and you don't think about the should yous or the long term impacts of what you're doing. Not that there was anything illegal or
Right.
anything, but I probably had to work at a pace and work in a way that wasn't true to who Janet was and is, as a mother, as a wife, as a just a human wanting to be good to other humans.
Mhm.
I had to do some pretty cutthroat business deals and or negotiations, and somebody has to do it. But I think at the end of the day, what I realized was that wasn't me.
Mhm.
Now, yes, I can and will for what's right and what I value, but it has to be something that's meaningful, not just for the sake of, you know, um, getting a leg up on someone. And so you say regret, or you say something I wish I would have done differently, and I have a hard time putting that time of my life in that category, because I wouldn't have met all the wonderful people I met. I wouldn't have gained all the amazing experience that I did. And I probably wouldn't be quite who I am today.
Mhm.
But I do often wonder, what if? What if I
Mhm.
had kind of resolved that this just isn't me earlier, and done the soul searching sooner and took a leap at an earlier point, where would I be? What would I be doing? So
That's interesting.
it is a question mark.
Yeah. So would you have handled the situation differently? Maybe made it more congruent, or you would have left the situation earlier?
That's a great question. If there's a regret, maybe there's a regret that I didn't bring my whole self to these situations in a way that's authentic to me. Mm-hmm. Meaning maybe there's a solution. Again, the art of possibility. Maybe it isn't a zero-sum game. Maybe there is a way that we can all win without, gouging your customer or not telling the truth or things like that. Mm-hmm. I probably would not want it to have walked away at that time, but perhaps having the agency mm-hmm. to bring more collaborative either thinking or processes to the forefront is probably what I would have done.
I just find that really interesting because too, as you get older, you finally go like, well, this is who I am. Right. Like I'm just going to be who I am. And if you don't like it, then don't work with me. You know what I'm saying? But that's really hard to do as a 35-year-old. And you don't know that you have the ability to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
And even if someone had told you, someone mm-hmm. listening to this podcast tries to do that, I don't know. I think there are experiences, there's maturity, there's a lot of life that goes into that statement. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a curious question to say, could you have gotten there sooner?
Yeah, that's something that you kind of just have to think about and be like, is that something that you have to live through and learn, and everybody just has to live through and learn it to get to the other side? Or is it something that you can figure outable a little bit earlier in life and you can figure out how to be authentic and bring it? Or is it per person? Like maybe some people can figure it out early and some people just have to live it. So I don't know. It's a really interesting question to ask, though.
It is. And especially as you swivel your chair and start raising kids and you get frustrated because they don't listen, because they say, no, I need to learn it myself. And I've had my son tell me that before. Yeah. You can't argue. You can't argue with them.
Yeah, because they don't listen. But I sure do wish they would sometimes. I'm like, but I've got all this knowledge I could just help you with.
I know. Oh.
If you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self something, Janet, what would it be?
You're going to laugh at my response, but I would tell my 20-year-old Janet to wear the dress, be loud, wear the fuchsia, twist your hair, be authentic, mm-hmm. and don't feel like in order to be accepted in spaces that you have to, you have to morph into something that you're not. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a household where I was fortunate enough to be able to go to private school early in my education and was one of the only student of color, if, maybe two, and certainly more affluent peers in the classroom, access to different things, and honestly was never comfortable bridging the two Janets. I mean, or merging the two Janets, right? I had my home church, home friend Janet, and then who I was at school or on the phone with my friends. My mother used to say she could tell who I was talking to on the phone, the code switching, right? It's unfortunate that people, and I'm not going to just, certainly it's people of color, but I think there is an element of code switching that we all do. Mm-hmm. It's a survival tactic. It's a fear response. And it prevents you from getting to the place we're all trying to get, which is find out who are we at our fullest self? So I would tell my 20-year-old self, you wear the dang dress and be unapologetic, and they'll love you just for who you are.
Yeah. I like that idea too. The fact is that people don't really know who you are unless you bring your authenticity to this relationship. I've been there too, and I worry, oh, they won't like me, they won't. And you have to be just a little bit fearless to bring your whole self and say, if they don't like me, I guess that's okay.
That's right.
But I need to be who I am in all the different phases of my life. It's hard hiding, and it's not like you do it on purpose. It's just like you try and fit in, or,
That's right. That's right. I think even to build on that, you become, in some ways, if not checked, deferential to others before yourself. And even that can cause problems, later in life when you need to practice self-care. You need to make sure that your oxygen mask is on. And I think it's those habits that we build early in life, or just when unchecked, they grow into other bad habits. I find.
And that does seem to be a pretty prevalent problem among, women in professions, is burnout and not taking care of, saying yes to too much, taking care of everything over and before yourself. And so I think that's an interesting connection to find, is that if you're living authentically, maybe you're not making some of the mistakes that will lead you to that, to those later burnout phases or something like that. That's interesting. Janet, what scared you the most when you started your career? Did anything scare you? Did everything scare you? Does it still scare you?
Yeah, being good enough. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Do I belong in this room? Do I belong? I can, harken back to one of my first, I had been a supervisor and maybe became a manager, and was standing in for my boss at the time to go to a weekly meeting where she represented our team, and she wasn't there. So I went, and it was a long boardroom table with the chairs around the table, but then the chairs at the wall too. And I think I sat on the wall because that's what you do. First time in there. And I can't remember exactly who in the room, but they looked at me and they said, no, you come sit at this table. You belong here. And, I have examples like that throughout my career of just probably not feeling confident in what I was bringing to the table and what I deserved. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, sometimes that was a projection of what maybe I perceived someone else thought of me, that then, I don't know whether it was born out of me or born out of feedback I had gotten, but just not feeling like I was worthy or good enough. That voice or that insecurity isn't as strong as it once was. And again, the logic in me, or the logical person in me, says, well, what is this born out of? And is it true? And if it's not true, stop listening to it, right? I can talk to myself now, whereas I didn't have those tools and skills back then. So, yeah.
So it's just a matter of kind of learning how to self-talk that got you past that anxiety, or that I'm not sure I'm enough.
Yeah. And that, first you have to realize you're doing it. You have to realize that, that person is sitting on your shoulder, whispering things to you, whether you even realize it. And once you realize that, and that it's not always serving you well, and it's the fear talking, and then you're able to put it in its place, or have a conversation with it at least.
Tell it to be quiet. Tell it to stop saying mean things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
But I think it's probably a lifelong sort of thing, because I still have those. I do the same. I'm very logical and analytical coming from a family of engineers, as you can
Yes.
imagine. And so I do have those same conversations with myself. You're good. You do good things. We probably need to make some sort of a mantra that we just say ourselves every day in the mirror, right?
Listen, I have the stickers. You are everything that you think you are. And just, because we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
I think, the world doesn't intend to do it, but some things outside our houses aren't terribly kind. And so it's important for us to lift ourselves up.
Oh, I like that idea, Janet. Like, be kind to yourself. Like, tell yourself nice things, right?
Yes. Yes. It makes a world of difference. Gosh. Yeah.
Did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman?
Of course. I would like to think that, I didn't grow up in the time and space that my mother did, and that I was, she fought so that we could have equal footing in the workplace, but that wasn't the case at all. I am my husband was in the Air Force for 28 years, and he was active duty when we got married. And when we decided to have kids, and he went on deployments where I predominantly worked outside the home, but had to make sure my kids were taken care of when he was gone. I can remember when I came back from one of my maternity leaves, I had a boss tell me, "Yeah, you're just not as sharp as you were before you went out with that, what are you supposed to say to that?" And the answer is, back then, probably nothing, because it would have, again, I'm the hungry 30-some-year-old trying to be, everything. So of course I didn't say anything, but I can recall having peer leaders and executives in a room just look at me with sadness, remorse, because they knew I was bearing the brunt of things, because I was sometimes the only woman, and certainly the only Black in the room. So yes, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes it's easy for me to remember that those ahead of us like kind of broke ground, that we were able to come in and we had a lot different experience than they did, because sometimes it felt like, but my goodness, it's so hard still.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we like to say you stood on the shoulders of, I think things were better. The opportunities were probably more abundant for me, but it was still hard, and it still is.
Yeah, it is. It is still hard. I think that each generation helps the situation along, and I'm hoping that this next generation is going to fix all the whole problems.
That's what I'm hoping for. You're exactly right, because it's a mess, isn't it?
Yeah. Janet, what are you most proud of?
This was a fun question, because typically, as adults, we don't get asked that question. But in thinking through it, I am most proud of my almost 30-year marriage. Today, we're celebrating our 30th Valentine's Day, because next year, so it's been 29 years that we've been married. But yeah, I think in hindsight, life is hard. We've been talking about my career and some difficult challenges, but there's a partner. If you're lucky, there's a partner in that with you that struggles through it. You struggle through theirs. You have your own ups and downs, but when you can get through it on the other side, I think that's something to be proud of. There are reasons to celebrate the journey, and I think that's something to be said, and something I'm proud of. And of course, the fruit, the children, the lineage, the experiences, but the fact that we took a leap of faith and it worked out is something that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I have a feeling it didn't just work out. I had a feeling there's a lot of work put into making it work out, right?
Yes, yes. The verb being work. It's a work. It's a workout every day, every day, every day.
Yeah, that is important though. And I do think that these people in our lives, our kids, our husbands, our parents, there's people in our lives that help us along this journey. It's not just us that's doing it. And it's not just them that's doing it either, like we're part of each other's stories. And I think that's a really important, I think that is an important thing to know, that you've been part of each other's stories and success for like 30 years now. Congratulations.
A long time.
Yeah.
Over half my life. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It is kind of funny when you realize, like, I spent less time with my parents than I have with these people.
Right. So yeah, that's something, that's one of many things.
Yeah. What about any advice for a young lady who's maybe just starting down this path that you're successful at? Is there something that you would pass on or share with her?
Yes, probably two things. One, nothing is going to be a straight line. So get that out of your head. That education, life, your experiences are about defining who you are and what you're meant to be in this world. And so be open to seeing things and reading cues that may tell you different from what, your parents told you or your textbook told you. Because at the end of the day, what you have to offer this world, no one knows but you. And it's up to you to unearth it, to feed it, and to help it grow so that you can be the person you were meant to be. And I guess as a part of that, the second thing I would say is it's okay to take time to find that out, right? We seem to have embedded an obsession with, get all the degrees, do all the things, get the job, get the husband, have the kids, and then you sit there and you wonder why you're not happy. And I think women need to realize that fulfillment means many things to many different people. And with the social media and all the things that we read and experience would tell us sometimes differently. Mm-hmm. But again, we've got to be in touch with ourselves to understand what's right for us and seek that out. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you'll find it. So,
yeah, I think that's important. There are sometimes lots of twists and turns in your path. And I know that, I've raised 5 kids, and watching them go through school and having, it feels like at middle school, they started telling them, this is the way that you do things. You do this and you do this. And unless you're in an Ivy League school by this point, give up hope, because you're never going to be successful. And I think it's really, really important to understand that there are lots of different ways to be successful. And even if you view success as, the dream job and the great family and everything gelling, there are lots of different ways to get to that success too.
That's right. And being okay with that, and being okay with defending that. Because you probably spend just as much time talking yourself into it as you do defending to outsiders that don't understand it. Yeah. And so it can be tough. But yes, that's what I would.
Well, Janet, thank you so much for your time today and for having this conversation with me and sharing your information and your journey. I really have appreciated it. If I've got a young lady who's listening and they want to get in touch with you and ask you a question, how do they do that?
Yes, they should find me I have a website called Absolutely Balanced. And absolutely is spelled ABSOULUTELY, balanced.com. The soul is in there on purpose. So you can find me there, Janet Gipson, or just look me up on LinkedIn, Janet Darden Gipson. And hopefully they've found something inspiring. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.